Shadow and Bone is cancelled. So, what now? This whole scenario with Shadow and Bone has been sad, a little pathetic. I expected to make this a simple joke reel on Instagram, but I've done 3 videos on this franchise, I guess that's what this is, and maybe I should address it a little bit more, just a tad, just a tinkle. Okay, so elephant in the room, Shadow and Bone was a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was either going to cancel or turn into Riverdale. There would have been no in between. From a marketing, production, franchising, any kind of perspective, any way you looked at this, it was going to be a disaster. The only way you probably didn't see this coming is because you like the show, which I can't stop you from doing that, but the reality is it was never going to work well. The Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows books are too different from each other in tone and thematics. Being in the same universe doesn't mean they'll do well in a singular story. That's like mixing WandaVision and the Captain America Winter Soldier show together. It makes no sense. Shadow and Bone is also a debut novel series, and it shows it lacks a lot of the quality that was later developed in Six of Crows. I already talked about most of the detailed problems in both season 1 and season 2, so this is just more of a conclusion or an epilogue to this dumpster fire of a saga. That is, unless they decide to make another adaptation and mix the previous 2 shows with King of Scars or some shit, because apparently we make TV show cocktails now. I think I've established this, but I am a Six of Crows book fan more than a Shadow and Bone book fan. I dislike Nina and Mateus's romance, but all in all, it is a better story and had more adaptation potential. This video is more of me talking about any other possibilities that I may not have mentioned in the previous videos, and also general ideas of why this was doomed to fail. So, listen. Netflix knows weird concepts. They do. They've done Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, Love, Death and Robots, and that mystery show where you randomize episodes and it becomes a different story. They know how to play around with structures and ideas for TV shows. So the idea of a hybrid adaptation isn't so intense of an idea for a company like Netflix. They could have potentially made a very interestingly structured show by combining 2 stories from the same universe. Obviously, it's gonna be very difficult, considering Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone are wildly different books, and things like Black Mirror or Love, Death and Robots have different stories, but they're written around the same time and they must have some quality control in each story, whereas these Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone books were written at different times, with possibly different mindsets, since Leigh Bardugo now apparently doesn't want her young audience anymore because they get too traumatized by her new series and she doesn't want to put in trigger warnings in the name of feminism. Kids, am I right? A lot of things needed to happen to both adaptations if this was going to be in any way cohesive. First of all, they can't be in the same story. It just doesn't work. Book Alina's problems are so trivial and stupid compared to that of the Crows. Alina's problems only seem important when it's in her own world, which is how she acts most of the time. The Crows' problems are important because it feels more real in a way, and in that way, the situation feels more helpless. Giving some credit, Eric Hessier and Leigh Bardugo, if she took part in this at all, did try to counteract this problem by making Alina part Shu, and she does go through genuine racial adversity in the show. Some of them hitting a little too close to home, I feel. Like the serving maids suggesting she should change her eye shape. Oh no. You can get behind the show Alina since she is going through something very real. Maybe a little too real for something that's written and directed by white people. But I guess we're just ignoring that little detail. Alina now has racial adversity, right? So that makes her problems sort of on the same level as that of the Crows. Nice, I guess. Except there's one problem. This guy. Remember Book Alina? Yeah, her. Book Alina had nothing much going on in her life aside from Mal. The very reason no one knew she had Grisha powers was because of Mal. And as much as I don't like the ending of the books, where they both get married or whatever, it does tie in well to the entire story in its own pathetic way, but who am I to judge? The show can't do this, however, because in the show, Mal isn't the only thing going on in Alina's life. She now has to deal with blatant and brutal racism. Yay! So to any fan who was upset by the show not having the original ending, it's probably because a white girl giving up her powers to be with the white guy she was obsessed with is a fine ending for a YA fantasy. But an Asian girl going through intense racism and finding that she has something special about her, only to then give that up for her white boyfriend, doesn't quite ring the same church bells, you know? Especially since this is a story of wartime and the Asian girl being taken to be a white man's wife because she is now powerless is probably cutting it too close to history, and I think it'd be in poor taste to call that a happy ending. So maybe don't do that. Although, I don't think the creators did that much thinking. This is just me theorizing and giving them more credit than they probably deserve, because they did also insinuate that Alina was gonna turn evil with her powers, which it's a powerful story when Asian women write Asian women in this sort of unhinged way. But when a white director does it, it feels, I don't mean to be politically, I don't want to politically micromanage, but you know, it feels different. I'm just saying. And I can already feel it. Yes, this is getting a bit racialized and political, but in my defense, they started it when they started talking about eye shapes and withholding wartime rations based on race. I didn't write that, but as a reviewer, I do need to analyze it, as uncomfortable as it is. All of those experiences should impact the character's arc, otherwise it just sounds like the writers are being racist through fictional characters. Conclusion: Netflix fucked up. The YA fiction hemisphere is the best money-making space for stories. The audience will love anything. Jacob fell in love with a baby, and people still like Twilight. In any other world, even fictional, Jacob would be considered a disgusting creep who needs to be put in jail. But he's a werewolf! And this is how werewolves be, according to someone. When Divergent was cancelled, it was news. It was a big deal because it takes a lot for YA fictions to just be scrapped. After has 5 movies. I haven't seen a single person like these movies, but it's there. It exists. Because if people don't like certain YA fictions, they will still make content about them. That is just the power of this genre. And don't tell me it was quality control for Netflix to cancel Shadow and Bone. I know it was bad, but come on. Even 13 Reasons Why got more than 2 seasons, and that show caused actual real-life problems. So, how would I have done this show? I would have adapted Six of Crows properly. I would have written a new character specifically for Ben Barnes to play, maybe a mysterious prison mate for Mateus so I don't fall asleep during his scenes. And I would hand Shadow and Bone to someone else. Preferably some Chinese and Mongolian writers and directors who could have navigated the new Alina arc. I know Shu is a fictional race, but it's also an extremely direct equivalent of the very real Chinese and Mongolian races. So maybe, I don't know, take that into account a little bit. But that's just me. Okay, rip to Shadow and Bone and read Six of Crows. Goodbye.